I wanted to provide you an example of what's called the SOAPStone graphic organizer, which is really handy for reading particularly nonfiction things that may or may not have a slant, um, but that you need to find out, like, is this a legitimate source and what are they really trying to get across? So you're going to implement the SOAPStone graphic organizer with either an article that has to do with like skills needed in a career, or you could even find a TED talk or a presentation on YouTube and watch it and then use this graphic organizer there. Now, if you use a TED talk, you may have to go a little farther, reading the description of the video or following some information to find out more about your speaker because it may not be inherent in the presentation itself. Same thing with an article, you may have to click somewhere to find out that information, but you are reading this analytically. So in my example, I went to Workopolis and found this career article, what your handwriting says about your career. Um, and then I went ahead and completed my graphic organizer. So the S stands for speaker, who is the speaker. And this actually was an odd article because it's put out by this company called Workopolis, but it just says by Workopolis. So we don't actually know who the speaker is. So I had to say no actual name is given, but it's published by Workopolis. And then I had to go find out who Workopolis is. And it's a company that provides job services to Canadians. So I included that information in my graphic organizer. What is the occasion? So O is occasion. So was this written for some specific reason? So, if you found an article and it was specific to um, the COVID thing that happens here in 2020, then that's going to be specific to that. If I'm talking about face masks or something, then that might be specific to that event in time. This particular article was dated January 23rd, 2018. I could not find any reason in the article as to why, but since the publisher helps people find jobs, then I just put that more than likely this was just considered knowledge they felt like job seekers needed. And I indicated that they did interview some experts for the article. So I'm guessing the occasion was they found some experts and interviewed them and then wanted to write an article. A is audience. So who is the audience for this? So, if you're looking at a TED Talk, you can kind of tell, like, are we looking at just random people? Not usually. I mean, there's usually a specific audience that we're creating that for. Maybe it's somebody with a certain mindset, but in this case, we're talking about job seekers because that's the whole point of the Workopolis website. P is purpose. What did the author want the audience to think or do as a result of reading this? Why did the author write it? What's the message? And so the message on this one that I read was that your handwriting could say much more about you and your career path than you realize. The author explains how various attributes of your penmanship reflect your personality. And then I included here a quote because he quoted a handwriting expert, and I thought that was important in showing the purpose of the article. That handwriting expert says, I always say your handwriting is a paper mirror of your personality. So I think that really is kind of the thesis of the article. They wanted people to understand that handwriting is a mirror of your personality, and that was part of that purpose. The subject, topic, content, and what ideas are here and how is it presented. Here, the author encourages the reader to write down something in the article when you read it. It says to, and then it says, let's look at it based on the strokes and crosses, size, slants, and then your signature. And he says, here's what I believe. Handwriting isn't really handwriting, it's mind writing using the hands as a tool. So as we go through this article, you can see talking about crossing your T's. The people who cross right at the center are clear-headed types. If your cross is higher on the stem, you might have lofty ambitions. It goes through some other additional things here too. Size, people with tiny handwriting are the type to sweat the small stuff. It would be good in things like accounting. Or if your script is big and bold, you're most likely like that too. Slants, they said to the experts, one of the most meaningful features is the slant, and a forward slant shows that you're sympathetic, attentive, and naturally adept at dealing with people. If it's straight, you prefer to solve problems with logic. And then, of course, they argue a little bit about signatures because one expert says the signature doesn't really matter, and another one says that it does. So anyway, that's kind of what they got into on here. And I just talked about the general bit. You don't have to go into all the super details on that. And then finally, what's the tone? What's the author's attitude about the subject? Is the author emotional? Now, in a TED Talk, oftentimes they do get kind of emotional. This particular article is generally objective. Objective meaning they're not really taking a side. No real assumptions are made. This author shows both sides of the issue. They have two experts that they use. In one part, the author said the experts don't quite agree on whether your signature is all that meaningful, and then they give examples about how one of them said a squiggle signature could be an unapologetic take me or leave me kind of stamp. So the tone of this article really is objective and informational, but you may have an article that is kind of persuasive. They may show that the author is like irritated about something, or maybe the author is super optimistic about the future or bitter about something. So, um, be careful about the tone, really reading to try to find out the overall tone. But that's basically it. To do the graphic organizer, be sure you put a link to your article or TED Talk and the name of that up at the very top of the page. Probably should also add your name up there as well.